I still remember the Tuesday morning an email popped up, right as I was sifting through quarterly reports. The subject line just said, "Emergency. Need to talk ASAP." My older sister, Emily, was never one for all caps unless something truly significant was happening. I clicked it open, a knot already forming in my stomach. The body was just as terse. "Can you call me? It's about the house. We're in serious trouble." 3 hours later, I was sitting across from Emily and her husband, Daniel, at their kitchen table in suburban Cincinnati. That sprawling house, with its vaulted ceilings and marble, always felt a bit over the top, but they'd sworn it was an investment when they bought it 5 years back. Now, Emily's eyes were red-rimmed, and Daniel couldn't quite meet my gaze. "We refinanced twice," Emily started, her voice barely a whisper. "The ARM reset last month, and the payment jumped from $3,000 to almost $7,000. Daniel chimed in, "My commission structure changed at work, and Emily's consulting clients have dried up completely." I just listened as they laid out the full scope of their financial disaster. They were 4 months behind on the mortgage, staring down foreclosure within 60 days. Credit cards were maxed, car payments overdue. They'd even borrowed from Daniel's parents, but couldn't ask for more. "We need $185,000 to catch up and refinance into a fixed rate," Daniel finally said, spreading loan documents across the table. "We've exhausted every other option." Emily reached across and grabbed my hand. "I know you have your retirement savings. You've always been so careful with money, so responsible. We'll pay you back. I promise. We just need this one thing to get back on our feet." The sheer audacity of it hit me like a physical blow. They wanted me to hand over nearly 2 decades of careful saving, of living below my means, of sacrificing vacations and new cars and designer clothes. Money I'd accumulated by working 60-hour weeks as a financial analyst, by brown bagging my lunch every day, by driving my Honda until it had 200,000 miles on it. "That's my entire retirement fund," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything I've saved since I was 23. "But you're only 41, Emily countered, her voice rising. "You have plenty of time to save again. We're about to lose everything." Daniel jumped in with spreadsheets, detailing their projected income recovery. "In 2 years, we'll be back on track. We can start paying you back in monthly installments. $5,000 a month once we stabilize." I looked around their kitchen, the sub-zero refrigerator, the 8-burner Wolf range, the custom cabinetry. Through the window, I could see their pool with its elaborate stone waterfall. Daniel's BMW sat in the driveway next to Emily's Mercedes SUV. "When did you know you were in trouble?" I asked. Emily glanced at Daniel. "About 8 months ago, when the first refinance payment jumped. And you didn't cut back on anything, I thought, didn't sell one of the cars or cancel the country club membership. We have kids." Emily's voice rose defensively. "Noah is in travel soccer, and Chloe takes riding lessons. We can't just uproot their entire lives because of a temporary setback." Noah was 14, Chloe 11. Good kids, but utterly unaware that their lifestyle was built on a foundation of debt and denial. I'd watched my sister and brother-in-law spend money like water for years, always justifying it as necessary for the children or for Daniel's career image. "I can't give you that money," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, but I just can't." Emily's expression shifted from pleading to outright anger in seconds. "Can't or won't? Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters." She stood up, knocking her chair backward. "We're family. You're supposed to help family. What good is having all that money if you won't use it when your own sister is drowning?" Daniel tried to calm her down, but she was on a roll now, years of resentment apparently bubbling to the surface. According to her, I'd always been the selfish one, the cold one, putting money before relationships. She'd sacrificed her career to raise her children while I focused on climbing the corporate ladder. Now, when she needed me most, I was showing my true colors. "I need you to leave," Daniel finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. This isn't productive. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Part of me felt guilty for saying no. Emily was my sister, and she was genuinely terrified of losing her home. But another part recognized the manipulation, the attempt to make their poor financial decisions into my moral failure. The drive back to my apartment took 40 minutes through rush hour traffic, giving me plenty of time to replay the conversation. Every accusation Emily had thrown at me echoed in my mind, mixing with my own doubts and fears. What if I really was being selfish? What if years from now I'd regret not helping when I had the chance? But then I remembered something from a financial planning seminar. The speaker had talked about the oxygen mask principle. You have to secure your own mask before helping others. If I emptied my retirement accounts for Emily, what would happen when I faced my own emergency? Who would bail me out? My apartment felt especially quiet when I walked in, a stark one-bedroom that reflected my minimalist lifestyle. The furniture was practical rather than stylish. The walls mostly bare except for a few framed photos from a hiking trip to Zion. This was what careful financial management looked like, modest, unglamorous, secure. I made myself dinner, though I barely tasted it. My mind kept circling back to those loan documents Daniel had spread across their kitchen table, to the desperation in Emily's eyes, to the way they both looked at me like I was their last hope. Part of me wanted to be that hope, to be the sister who swooped in and saved the day. My phone started ringing the moment I set my plate in the sink. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Emily called me crying, she said without preamble. How could you refuse to help her? She's your sister. I took a deep breath and tried to explain my position, but my mother wasn't interested. She'd always favored Emily, her firstborn, the one who'd given her grandchildren and lived the conventional life my mother valued. I was the odd one out, unmarried and childless by choice, focused on career and financial independence. Your father and I raised you to take care of family, she continued. This is just money we're talking about. Emily's children might end up without a home. They won't be without a home, I said. They'll downsize to something they can actually afford. Listen to yourself. So cold, so calculating. Is this what your precious career has turned you into? The conversation ended badly with my mother hanging up on me after declaring I was breaking her heart. 2 hours later, my father called. His approach was different, more measured, but the message was identical: family comes first, and I needed to give Emily the money. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. Emily texted me constantly, alternating between begging and accusatory messages. My parents called daily. Even my Aunt Linda got involved, leaving a voicemail about the importance of sisterly bonds. Daniel sent me revised payment plans with increasingly optimistic projections. The text messages from Emily became increasingly unhinged as the days passed. Monday morning, please reconsider. The kids are scared. Tuesday afternoon, I can't believe you're doing this to us. Wednesday evening, Mom says you were always the cold one. I defended you for years, but I guess she was right. Thursday brought a new tactic. She sent me photos of Noah and Chloe looking sad, accompanied by messages about how they might have to change schools mid-year, how traumatic it would be for them. The manipulation was transparent, using her children as emotional weapons, but it still wormed its way under my skin. My mother called every single day, usually in the evening when she knew I'd be home from work. Each conversation followed the same script: initial pleasantness, then the pivot to Emily's situation, then escalating frustration when I wouldn't budge, then guilt about family obligations, then tears or anger depending on her mood. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you, she said on Friday night. She always said family takes care of family, no matter what. When your father lost his job in the 90s, our families helped us. That's what you do. I wanted to point out that helping with groceries during unemployment was vastly different from handing over nearly $200,000 to fund an unsustainable lifestyle. But the conversation had gone beyond logic. This was about family mythology, about loyalty as defined by compliance, about my role as the responsible daughter who fixed everything. Work became my only refuge, the one place where nobody expected me to set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. I threw myself into a complex portfolio analysis, staying late in the office to avoid going home to my ringing phone. My manager, Michelle, noticed my extended hours, but misread the situation as dedication rather than avoidance. "You're putting in impressive work on the climate account," she said Friday afternoon. "Keep this up and we'll definitely be talking about that senior analyst position." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was building my career, securing my future, doing exactly what I was supposed to do, and my family saw it as evidence of my moral failure. If I'd been less successful, less careful, less disciplined, maybe they'd expect less from me. My confidence had become my burden. Saturday morning brought a surprise visit from Daniel. I'd just finished my coffee when the doorbell rang, and there he stood on my apartment building's front steps, looking haggard and desperate. "Can we talk?" "Just 5 minutes," he pleaded. Against my better judgment, I let him into the lobby. We sat in the bland common area with its beige furniture and motivational posters. Daniel perched on the edge of a chair like he might bolt at any moment. "Emily doesn't know I'm here," he started. "I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the house. If we lose it, Emily will never forgive herself. She'll fall apart. She's been having panic attacks, not sleeping, crying every night. I'm worried about her mental health." The implication was clear: if something happened to Emily, it would be my fault. Her well-being was now my responsibility simply because I had the financial resources to prevent her suffering. The logic was absurd, but the emotional weight of it pressed down on me anyway. "Daniel, you both made choices that led to this situation," I said as gently as I could. "Multiple refinances, lifestyle inflation, ignoring the warning signs. I can't fix those choices by sacrificing my own future." "But you can afford it," he insisted. "You don't have kids. You don't have a mortgage. You live in this tiny apartment. What are you even saving for? You have more than you need." There it was. The assumption that my child-free, mortgage-free life meant my money was somehow surplus, extra, available for redistribution to family members who'd made different choices. My decades of discipline were rendered meaningless because I didn't have the conventional markers of responsible adulthood that apparently justified expensive lifestyles. "I'm saving for my future," I said. "For retirement, for emergencies, for freedom. That's what the money is for." Daniel left looking defeated, but I felt no satisfaction in holding my ground. Each conversation, each confrontation chipped away at my resolve. Even as I maintained my boundaries, the emotional exhaustion was overwhelming. I stopped sleeping well. My stomach constantly churned, and I had trouble concentrating at work. My colleague David noticed my distraction during a budget meeting and pulled me aside afterward. "Whatever's going on, you need to take care of it," he said kindly. "You're not yourself." That evening, I made a decision. I started researching property prices in different cities, looking at job opportunities, calculating what it would take to make a clean break. Seattle, Nashville, Charlotte, places far enough from Cincinnati that my family couldn't just drop by unannounced. Cities with strong job markets in my field. Before I could act on any of it, the situation exploded. My father called on a Saturday morning, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Your mother had to be taken to the emergency room last night. Chest pains. The stress of this situation with you and Emily is literally killing her." My heart clenched despite everything. "Is she okay?" "They're running tests. But you need to understand something. If you don't help your sister, you're no longer part of this family. Your mother and I won't have a daughter who can turn her back on her own flesh and blood in their hour of need." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. Pay Emily's debt or be disowned. Choose my carefully built financial security or my relationship with my parents and sister. Surrender nearly 2 decades of sacrifice or be cast out as the family villain. I need to think about this, I said. There's nothing to think about. Wire the money to Emily by Monday or don't bother coming to any family gatherings ever again. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch staring at my phone, emotions swirling inside me. Part of me wanted to give in, to preserve the family peace, even at enormous personal cost. But a larger part recognized this pattern, the way my family had always expected me to be the responsible one, the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes while receiving no support in return. My mother had been fine. It turned out the chest pains were anxiety-related, and she was released from the hospital that same day. But the medical scare had been weaponized, turned into another reason why I should comply with their demands. Sunday morning, I woke up with absolute clarity. I couldn't live like this anymore. Constantly being manipulated and guilt-tripped, having my boundaries trampled whenever someone else made poor choices. I opened my laptop and started executing a plan I'd been formulating for days. First, I logged into my bank accounts and methodically moved money around. My parents and I had maintained joint accounts since I was in college, an arrangement that had never been changed, despite my repeated suggestions that we separate our finances. My mother used these accounts occasionally to transfer money for birthday gifts or to reimburse me for expenses when we traveled together. Now, those joint accounts became my escape route. I transferred every dollar from the joint accounts into my personal accounts. It wasn't stealing. Legally, joint account holders have equal rights to the funds. But it was a clear message that I was done being treated as the family ATM. The amounts weren't huge, maybe $15,000 total, but it was the principle that mattered. Next, I booked a one-way flight to Charlotte, leaving Tuesday morning. I'd been offered a position there 6 months ago and had turned it down because I didn't want to leave my family. That decision now seemed absurdly naive. I called the company's HR director, hoping the offer might still be available. "We'd love to have you," she said enthusiastically. "When can you start?" 2 weeks. Perfect. I'll send over the paperwork today. The new job came with a 15% salary increase and full relocation assistance. Within hours, I found a short-term apartment rental and started the process of hiring movers. I worked through Sunday afternoon and evening, organizing 18 years of Cincinnati life into categories: ship to Charlotte, donate, sell, throw away. At 11:45 Sunday night, my phone lit up with a text from my father. "Wire transfer deadline is 9 a.m. tomorrow. Pay her debt or you're disowned. Final warning." I stared at those words for a long moment, feeling a strange sense of calm. They pushed me into an impossible corner, demanded I sacrifice my future for their approval. The choice had been made for me. Really, I just needed to accept it. At midnight exactly, I sent a group text to my parents and Emily. "I've moved all funds from our joint accounts into my personal accounts. I'm relocating to Charlotte on Tuesday for a new job. I will not be giving Emily any money for her mortgage. I wish you all well, but I'm done being the family scapegoat. Don't contact me." Then I blocked all their numbers. The reaction was immediate and explosive. My email inbox filled with messages ranging from pleading to threatening. Emily's husband, Daniel, somehow got my work email and sent a long screed about my selfishness. Within minutes, my personal email had 17 new messages. My mother's subject line read, "How could you?" Emily sent 4 emails in rapid succession, each more frantic than the last. Daniel's work email message was a masterpiece of projection, accusing me of destroying a family while conveniently forgetting their attempt to destroy my financial security. "You've shown your true nature," Daniel wrote. "We offered you a fair repayment plan, a chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. Instead, you've chosen money over people, greed over love. I hope you can live with yourself when Emily and the kids are without a home. I hope your retirement fund keeps you warm at night when you're old and alone with no family to care about you." The viciousness was startling, especially from Daniel, who'd always presented himself as the reasonable one. But desperation strips away pretense, revealing the entitlement and anger that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. My mother's emails were different, mournful rather than angry, heavy with disappointment and religious language about forgiveness and sacrifice. "I don't recognize the person you've become," she wrote. "The daughter I raised would never abandon her family in their darkest hour. I'm praying for your soul." My mother left voicemails on my work phone crying about betrayal. The work voicemails were particularly invasive. My mother had somehow gotten the main office number and asked to be transferred to my extension, where she left increasingly emotional messages. The first one was mostly crying, barely coherent words about betrayal and heartbreak. The second one was calmer, a carefully crafted guilt trip about all the sacrifices she'd made raising 2 daughters. "I gave up my career for you and Emily," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I stayed home. I put my dreams on hold. I devoted my life to being a mother. And this is how you repay me? By abandoning your sister when she needs you most? What was it all for if my daughters won't even help each other?" The third voicemail was my father, his tone cold and clipped. "Your mother is inconsolable. She's questioning everything about how we raised you, wondering where we went wrong. If you had any decency, you'd call her back and apologize. The money doesn't even matter anymore. It's about basic human kindness, which you've apparently lost." My desk phone rang 6 times Monday morning alone. I stopped answering, let everything go to voicemail. My assistant, Lisa, looked concerned but didn't ask questions, just quietly fielded the calls and took messages I had no intention of returning. My father somehow found my apartment building and showed up Monday evening, pounding on my door and demanding I let him in. I was packing kitchen boxes when the pounding started. Through the peephole, I could see my father's distorted face, red and furious. His fist hammered against the door with enough force that I worried he might actually damage it. "Open this door right now," he shouted. "We need to talk about this like adults instead of you running away like a coward." Several neighbors opened their doors, peering out at the commotion. Mrs. Kim from across the hall looked alarmed. The young couple in 3B started recording on their phone, probably worried about their own safety. "I'm calling security," I said through the door, keeping my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "You'll call security on your own father? What kind of monster are you?" His voice cracked with genuine disbelief. In his worldview, this was the ultimate betrayal, choosing strangers to enforce boundaries against family. I called building security and had him removed. Through the peephole, I watched him being escorted to the elevator, his face purple with rage. Security arrived within 3 minutes. 2 guys I recognized from the front desk, professional and calm. They spoke to my father in low voices, and I watched his body language shift from aggressive to defeated. One security guard's hand stayed near his radio the entire time, ready to call the police if needed. As they walked him to the elevator, my father turned back one last time. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," he called out. "Family is all you have in this world. When you're old and alone, don't come crying to us." The elevator doors closed on his final words. It was the last time I saw him in person. Tuesday morning, I loaded my car with essentials and drove to the airport. The movers would handle everything else, shipping my belongings to Charlotte while I started my new life. As my plane lifted off from Cincinnati/Northern Kentucky International Airport, I felt lighter than I had in months, grief mixed with relief in equal measure. Charlotte welcomed me with clear skies and mountain views. The new job was challenging but rewarding. My colleagues were friendly without being invasive. I found a permanent apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, a cozy 1-bedroom with hardwood floors and a balcony facing west toward the mountains. For the first month, I jumped every time my phone rang, half expecting my family to somehow track me down despite the blocks. But they never did. I'd made myself clear, and apparently, they finally heard me. The silence was both painful and liberating. The adjustment to Charlotte life came in waves. Some days I woke up energized by the possibilities, the mountain air, the sense of a fresh start. Other days, the loneliness hit hard. The reality that I'd severed every family connection in one decisive stroke. I'd find myself reaching for my phone to call my mother about something mundane, a recipe question, a funny story from work, only to remember that we didn't speak anymore. The muscle memory of family connection took time to unlearn. My new colleagues invited me to happy hours and weekend hikes. I accepted cautiously at first, wary of getting too close, of having to explain why I'd moved across the country so abruptly. But Laura from accounting and Denise from operations were warm without being pushy, content to get to know me at my own pace. "You seem like you're running from something," Laura said one evening over drinks, her tone curious rather than judgmental. "Ex-friend? Bad job situation?" "Family stuff," I said vaguely. "Needed a fresh start." She nodded, understanding that this was as much as I wanted to share. "Well, Charlotte's a good place for reinvention. Half the people here came from somewhere else, looking to reset. The apartment in Capitol Hill became my sanctuary. I'd spend evenings on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold, feeling the tension of the past year slowly unwind from my shoulders. The financial anxiety I'd carried for so long, the fear of not having enough, of one emergency wiping out everything I'd built, began to ease. My retirement account sat untouched, growing steadily with each paycheck contribution and market gains. Every month, I'd log in and look at the balance, feeling a complex mix of relief and sadness. This was what I'd protected, what I'd sacrificed my family relationships to preserve. Some days it felt worth it. Other days, I wasn't sure. My Aunt Linda, my mother's sister who'd stayed out of the initial conflict, reached out through LinkedIn 3 months after my move. She was the only one I hadn't blocked, partly because she'd never been pushy and partly because I'd always liked her independent spirit. "Your parents are telling everyone you had a nervous breakdown," she wrote. "Thought you should know the narrative they're spinning." I thanked her for the heads up, but didn't engage beyond that. Let them tell whatever stories they needed to justify my absence. I knew the truth, and that was enough. Through Linda, I learned that Emily and Daniel had ultimately lost the house to foreclosure. They'd moved into a rental in a less expensive part of town, downsized from 5 bedrooms to 3. The kids had to switch schools and give up their expensive extracurricular activities. According to Linda, Emily blamed me for everything, claiming that my refusal to help had destroyed their lives. The narrative conveniently ignored the years of overspending, the multiple refinances, the refusal to adjust their lifestyle when warning signs appeared. In their version of events, I was the villain who'd abandoned family out of pure greed. They never acknowledged that they tried to manipulate and guilt me into funding their unsustainable lifestyle, or that they'd offered an ultimatum designed to force my compliance. I learned other details through Linda's carefully neutral updates. My parents had apparently taken out a home equity loan to help Emily with her situation, though it hadn't been enough. They downsized their own retirement plans to do it, moving money from investment accounts into the immediate crisis. "They're telling people they would have had to do it anyway if you'd said yes," Linda told me during one of our occasional phone calls. "The logic is that if you'd helped Emily, they wouldn't have had to. But since you didn't, they had no choice. So either way, you're responsible for their financial strain." The mental gymnastics required to maintain that narrative was impressive. Somehow my refusal to deplete my retirement had forced them to deplete theirs rather than Emily's choices being the actual cause of everyone's financial problems. But families excel at creating these alternate realities where the person who sets boundaries becomes the villain. "Do they ever ask about me?" I couldn't help asking. Linda hesitated. "Your mother brings you up sometimes, usually when she's had wine. Says she hopes you're happy with your choices. In that way, that makes it clear she doesn't actually hope that at all. Your father refuses to talk about you. Says he only has one daughter now." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I'd known the disownment was real, but hearing it confirmed that my father had actually written me out of the family in his mind felt like a fresh wound. 6 months into my Charlotte life, I ran into someone from my Cincinnati past. Laura Miller had worked in my old building, and we'd occasionally grabbed coffee together. Now, she was in Charlotte for a conference and suggested we meet for dinner. I heard about what happened with your family, she said carefully over appetizers. Office gossip. You know how it is. People took sides. What did you hear? That your sister needed help with medical bills or something and you refused because you're obsessed with money. She paused. But I also heard from people who knew you better that your family was trying to shake you down for a massive amount and you rightfully said no. It was strange to have my personal drama reduced to office gossip, my painful family rupture discussed casually by colleagues over lunch breaks, but Laura's next words surprised me. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. My brother pulled something similar on me a few years ago, wanted me to co-sign a business loan for $80,000. I said no, and he didn't speak to me for 2 years. But you know what? That business would have failed and I'd be stuck with the debt. Sometimes protecting yourself is the only option. Her validation meant more than I expected. I'd spent months questioning my decision, wondering if I'd been too harsh or too selfish. Hearing from someone outside my family that I'd made a reasonable choice helped quiet some of the lingering guilt. A year after leaving Cincinnati, I received a notification that my Aunt Linda had tagged me in a Facebook post. I didn't use social media much anymore, but curiosity made me log in. The post was a photo from a family gathering, Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Emily and her family were there, smiling and holding plates of turkey and stuffing. The caption read, "Grateful for family, even when it's smaller than it used to be." The passive-aggressive dig was obvious, but what struck me more was how normal they all looked. Life had gone on without me. They closed ranks, edited me out of the family narrative, moved forward. Emily's kids had grown taller. My mother's hair had more gray in it. Daniel had gained weight. I felt the pang of loss looking at that photo, but also a sense of affirmation. This was a family system I'd escaped, one where conditional love depended on financial compliance, where boundaries were treated as betrayals. They seemed fine without me, which meant I was free to be fine without them. My career flourished in Charlotte. Within 18 months, I'd been promoted to senior financial analyst, then to department director. The company valued my skills and work ethic without the constant family drama siphoning my energy and focus. I made new friends, joined a hiking club, started dating casually. The money I protected from Emily's demands continued growing in my retirement accounts. I calculated that I was now ahead of where I would have been if I'd given in to her demands and had to rebuild my savings from scratch. At my current rate, I'd be able to retire comfortably at 60, with options for travel and hobbies. Sometimes late at night, I wondered what would have happened if I'd said yes to Emily. Would I have gotten any of the money back? Would the family dynamics have improved? Or would I have simply established myself as the person who could be pressured into funding their poor choices? Would there have been another crisis, another demand, another ultimatum? I'd never know for certain, but my instincts told me that giving in would have only delayed the inevitable rupture while costing me my financial security. The pattern would have repeated until I either went broke or finally set a boundary, at which point I'd be blamed for letting things go on so long before saying no. The $185,000 Emily had demanded, that had seemed so reasonable to her and so catastrophic to me, would have set me back at least a decade, maybe more. I calculated it one evening out of curiosity. If I'd given her that money at 41 and tried to rebuild, working until 65, I'd still have less at retirement than I'd have by retiring at 55 without giving her anything. The 10 extra years of freedom I bought myself by saying no felt priceless. Did Emily understand the full scope of what she'd asked? Did she grasp that she wanted me to sacrifice a decade of my future for a house she couldn't afford? Did she recognize that her crisis was manufactured by her own choices, not by external circumstances? Or did she still see herself as the victim of my selfishness? I'd never know, and increasingly, I didn't need to. Her perspective on events was her burden to carry, not mine to correct. I'd made peace with being the villain in her story if it meant being the hero in my own. The Charlotte skyline looked beautiful from my back deck on summer evenings, the mountains purple against the sunset. Copper, my rescue dog, would lie at my feet, exhausted from our afternoon hike while I sipped wine and reviewed my finances. My net worth had crossed 7 figures the previous quarter, a milestone that felt deeply satisfying after years of disciplined saving and investing. None of my family knew about these achievements. They didn't know about the promotions or the house or the rich life I built. I was a ghost to them, edited out of family photos and holiday gatherings, reduced to a cautionary tale or convenient scapegoat depending on who was telling the story. The cost of freedom had been steep. I'd lost my parents, my sister, my niece and nephew, all the familiar rhythms of family life. But what I'd gained felt immeasurable: autonomy, peace, the ability to make choices based on my own values rather than someone else's expectations. I'd saved myself, and that salvation required no one's approval but my own. 2 years after my move, I got an unexpected LinkedIn message from Daniel, Emily's husband. "I need to apologize. Emily and I are getting divorced, and I've been doing a lot of reflecting on the choices we made. You were right to protect yourself. We were drowning and tried to drag you down with us. I'm sorry for my part in that." The apology landed strangely. I appreciated the acknowledgement, but didn't feel any particular need to reconnect. Daniel was part of a chapter of my life that had closed. I wished him well and left it at that. Emily never apologized, not directly. But my Aunt Linda told me that my sister had apparently said in a vulnerable moment that maybe she'd expected too much from me, that maybe she'd let her panic override her judgment. It wasn't the full accountability I might have wanted, but it was something. My parents remained convinced of their righteousness. According to Linda, they told people that they'd raised one successful daughter and one troubled one, carefully avoiding specifics about which was which. The ambiguity let them maintain their image while subtly positioning me as the problematic child who'd chosen money over family. I stopped caring about their narrative. Around year 3, my life in Charlotte had become rich and full, defined by my own choices rather than family obligations. I had colleagues who respected me, friends who valued my company without expecting me to fund their lifestyles, and a growing nest egg that represented freedom and security. The apartment in Capitol Hill gave way to a small house in Wash Park, a charming bungalow with a garden where I started growing vegetables. I adopted Copper, a mutt with floppy ears and boundless energy. Weekends were spent hiking in the Rockies or exploring the city's restaurant scene. I dated a civil engineer named Ethan for 8 months, a relationship that ultimately didn't work out, but taught me I was capable of trusting someone again after the family betrayal. He never pressured me for money or made me feel guilty for my boundaries. When we broke up, it was amicable, the natural end of something that had run its course. For years after leaving Cincinnati, my Aunt Linda called me with news that my mother had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. The prognosis was good, treatment already underway, but Linda thought I should know. "Are you going to reach out to her?" Linda asked gently. I thought about it for several days. Part of me wanted to extend an olive branch, to set aside the old hurt and be there for my mother in a health crisis. But another part remembered the ultimatum, the manipulation, the complete disregard for my well-being when I didn't comply with their demands. "I hope her treatment goes well," I finally told Linda, "but I'm not ready to reconnect." Maybe I never will be. Linda understood, or at least didn't push. She kept me updated on my mother's progress: surgery successful, chemotherapy completed, hair growing back. My mother apparently never asked about me, never expressed any regret for the way things had ended. She'd made her choice, and so had I. Emily's situation improved gradually. The divorce from Daniel was messy, but final. She got a steady job in office administration. Nothing glamorous, but stable income. Her kids adjusted to their new reality, apparently thriving in unexpected ways. Once freed from the pressure of maintaining appearances at the expense of school and exclusive activities, Noah discovered a talent for art when he transferred to the public school system, which had a better arts program than his old private school. Chloe joined the community soccer league instead of the elite travel team and made close friends she actually liked spending time with. They'd all been liberated from the trap of status and appearance, though probably none of them would see it that way. 5 years after my departure, I got promoted to vice president of financial planning at my company. The achievement felt significant, a validation of all those years of hard work and careful choices. I celebrated with friends at a nice restaurant, people who'd known me through various chapters of my Charlotte life, and who genuinely cared about my success. Nobody at that table expected me to fund their poor decisions or sacrifice my security for their benefit. Nobody made me feel guilty for being responsible with money or for setting boundaries. It struck me how much easier life became when you surrounded yourself with people who respected you rather than people who felt entitled to you. My retirement accounts had grown substantially. I was now on track to retire at 55 if I wanted, maybe even 50 if I continued my current trajectory. 6 years after that ultimatum, after that midnight decision to drain the joint accounts and book a one-way flight, I could finally say without reservation that I'd made the right choice. The family I'd left behind wasn't really a family. It was a system of obligation and guilt, of conditional love and transactional relationships. Here in Charlotte, I'd built something better. A life defined by respect rather than duty. By genuine connection rather than forced loyalty. I'd chosen myself, and that choice had made all the difference. What's a time you had to make a tough choice between your well-being and someone else's expectations?